I'm the sole survivor of a camping trip. I can't explain why I'm the only one it didn't take. Welcome to the Wilderness Protocol. The official reports are clean, clinical documents. They use words like exposure, disorientation, accidental death. They create a narrative that is logical, palatable, and, above all, final. It allows the world to file away a tragedy and move on. But some stories don't have a final page. Some stories are still being written in the nightmares and the waking silences of those who were left behind. My name is Ethan. The report on the Black Creek incident lists me as a survivor. A victim. The lucky one. But that is a lie. There were no survivors of that camping trip. There was just me. And the question that has become the sole occupant of my quiet moments, the ghost that sits in the chair across from me in the dead of night. Why? Why was I the only one it didn't take? There were 4 of us. It feels important to state that at the beginning, to establish the whole number before the subtractions began. It's a detail the official report gets right at least. We were a unit, a small tight-knit constellation of friendship that had navigated the chaotic universe of our 20s together. There was Liam, our steadfast leader, the man who knew the woods like the back of his own calloused hand. He was an Eagle Scout who never really stopped being one, always prepared, always calm, his presence a steady anchor in any storm. There was Chloe, the group's vibrant, laughing heart, a chef by trade who could turn rehydrated mush and a few foraged mushrooms into a feast that felt like a defiance against the wild. And there was Maya, our quiet observer, a talented artist whose sketchbook was a more accurate and soulful map of the wilderness than any official survey. Her charcoal pencils captured the secret life of things, the intricate fractal patterns of moss on a rotting log, the weary slump of a rain-soaked fern. And then there was me, Ethan, the storyteller, the one who would spin tales around the fire, the keeper of our shared history, the one who tried to find the words for the feelings the rest of us just felt. Our annual camping trip was a sacred ritual. A week every autumn, a pilgrimage away from the concrete and the deadlines into the deep, quiet heart of the world. For 7 years, we had explored the Sierras, the Rockies, the coastal forests. For our 8th trip, Liam proposed something different. The Black Creek Wilderness. It was more remote than our usual spots, a deep swath of old-growth forest in the Pacific Northwest, designated as a protected area but rarely patrolled and seldom visited. Its reputation was one of profound, almost unnerving silence. The photos we found online were mesmerizing. They showed colossal, moss-draped pine and fir trees, so tall and so dense their branches interlocked high above, creating a permanent state of twilight on the forest floor below. The ground was a deep, dark carpet of centuries of fallen needles. Liam was excited by the challenge of the untracked terrain. Chloe was enthralled by the rare, exotic fungi said to grow there. Maya was captivated by the unique quality of the light, the cathedral gloom as she called it. I was just happy to be with them, to be adding another chapter to the story of us. The first 2 days were idyllic, a memory I now replay in my mind on a loop, trying to find the exact moment the perfection began to curdle. We hiked deep into the park, far from any trail, guided by Liam's compass and his innate sense of the land. We found a perfect campsite in a small sheltered grove of these immense pine trees. They were truly giants, silent, green-bearded sentinels that had stood there for 1,000 years. They formed a natural clearing, their high branches creating a kind of living ceiling that made our small camp feel like a room in a vast green temple. I have a photograph from that second evening. It sits on my desk now, a flat, glossy lie. In it, Chloe is laughing, her head thrown back, a tin plate of her famous mushroom stew in her lap. Liam is tending the fire, a small, competent smile on his face. Maya is bent over her sketchbook, a charcoal smudge on her cheek. And I am looking at the camera, my arm around Chloe, my face alight with a simple, uncomplicated happiness that I no longer recognize as my own. We look so blissfully, stupidly safe. We had no idea we were already in the cage. We just hadn't seen the bars yet. The strangeness began on the 3rd night. It started, as so many strange things do in the wild, with the weather acting against its own script. Liam was checking the forecast on his satellite phone, a nightly ritual. He frowned, the firelight carving deep lines into his face. "That's odd," he muttered, tapping the screen. "The pressure is dropping. Fast. Like a major storm front is moving in." We all looked up, peering through the small gaps in the dense canopy. The sky was a cold, clear, diamond-hard sheet of black, littered with a billion stars. It was a perfect, windless night. There was no moon, but the starlight was so bright it cast faint, silvery shadows. "Not a cloud in sight," Chloe said, her voice full of its usual easy cheer as she poked the fire with a long stick, sending a shower of sparks into the dark. "Your fancy gadget must be on the fritz." "This fancy gadget has a better track record than the National Weather Service," Liam retorted, but he was trying to smile, to dismiss it. I could see a new tension in his shoulders. He was a man who trusted his equipment, who believed in data. And the data was telling him a story that his eyes couldn't see. He put the phone away, but for the rest of the evening, I saw him cast uneasy glances up at the still, silent branches high above. It was later, as the fire burned down to a pulsating bed of embers, that Maya was the one to notice the second anomaly. We were sitting in a comfortable silence, the easy quiet of people who know each other so well that words are often unnecessary. "Sure," she whispered suddenly, her head tilting, her artist's eyes wide and focused on the darkness beyond our firelight. "Listen." We all froze, straining our ears. The only sound was the soft, intimate crackle and hiss of the dying fire. "I don't hear anything," Liam said after a long, tense moment. "Exactly," Maya replied, her voice barely a breath. "I don't hear anything. Where are the crickets? I haven't heard a single one all night. Where are the owls? Where's the wind?" She was right. The constant, subtle, nocturnal symphony of the forest, the insect chatter, the hoot of a distant owl, the faint, high whisper of wind rustling through a million pine needles was gone. It had been replaced by a silence so complete, so profound, that it felt like a physical presence. It was not a peaceful silence. It was a vacuum. A heavy, expectant stillness that pressed in on us from all sides. It felt like the entire forest was holding its breath, waiting. And then into that absolute void of sound came the whispering. It began so faintly I thought it was a ringing in my own ears. A high, thin, sibilant noise. It wasn't the wind. The flames of our fire rose straight and tall, unwavering. It wasn't an animal. It was a sound I had no name for. It was like the rustle of 1,000 silk dresses, or the dry, collective sigh of 1,000,000 dead leaves. It seemed to emanate from the trees themselves, from the high, dark, interlocking branches that formed the ceiling of our grove. It was a chorus of soft, overlapping hisses and whispers. It seemed to have a rhythm, a cadence, like a conversation being held in a language we weren't meant to understand. It rose and fell, a soft, insistent, and deeply intelligent sound. "It's just the trees," Liam said, his voice a low, unconvincing rumble. "Temperature's dropping. The wood is contracting." He was a man clinging to a logical explanation in the face of an illogical reality. But we all knew it wasn't that. This was a sound with intent. It was conversational. It felt like we were sitting at the bottom of a deep, dark ocean, and the strange, unknowable creatures in the crushing dark above were discussing us, their voices filtering down in distorted, sibilant whispers. We tried to ignore it. We broke the silence with forced chatter, with jokes that fell flat. We laughed a little too loudly, our human noise a small, defiant shield against the vast, whispering quiet. But it was still there, an unnerving undercurrent to everything we said. The feeling of being observed, of being the subject of some ancient, arboreal discussion, was inescapable. We retreated to our tents early that night, the usual easy camaraderie gone, replaced by a shared, unspoken fear. I lay in my sleeping bag for hours, listening to the incessant, gentle whispering of the pines. It was a sound that should have been soothing, a forest lullaby. Instead, it felt like the cold, clinical murmur of surgeons discussing an operation they were about to perform. The next morning, we awoke to a world erased. The grove was shrouded in a thick, wet, An unnaturally cold fog. It was a featureless gray world. Our two tents and the cold black circle of the fire pit were the only solid things in a sea of silent, swirling vapor. Visibility was less than 10 feet. The fog was a wall sealing us in, cutting us off from the rest of the world. And the whispering was still there. In fact, it was louder now, clearer in the dense, damp air, as if the fog itself was the medium for the sound. "I don't like this," Chloe said, her voice small and tight, her usual vibrance completely extinguished. She stood at the flap of her tent, her arms wrapped around herself. "I feel like I can't breathe. The air is so heavy." She was right. The fog wasn't just water vapor. It had a weight and oppressive quality. It felt like the very air was thick with a silent, watching intelligence. Liam, our leader, our anchor, took charge. "We're not moving," he announced, his voice a forceful projection into the fog, a challenge to the whispering. "We're not going anywhere in this. We stay put. We stay together. We wait for it to burn off." So we waited. We spent a long, agonizing day in a state of self-imposed lockdown. The four of us huddled in the larger of the two tents, a small nylon dome that now felt like the entirety of our known universe. We played endless, joyless games of gin rummy. We tried to read, but our eyes would drift from the pages, our ears straining to decipher the constant, sibilant chatter from outside. Sometimes the whispering would almost resolve into a word. I would hear a sound that was almost my own name, a long drawn-out "then." Before it dissolved back into the meaningless hiss. It was learning. It was practicing. And then the quiet thievery began. It started with something so small, so trivial, we tried to dismiss it as carelessness born of stress. Chloe's coffee mug. It was a brightly colored ceramic thing, a silly gift I had given her, with a picture of a cartoon fox on it. She was fastidious about her gear. She swore she had left it right by the fire pit after her morning coffee. We searched for half an hour, our hands patting the damp, needle-covered ground in the small perimeter of our visibility. It was gone. Not misplaced. Gone. Later that afternoon, Liam went to consult his map, wanting to plan our route out for when the fog finally lifted. He reached for the compass pouch on his belt. It was empty. His compass, a high-end, oil-filled Sunto that had been his trusted companion for a decade, was gone. "It's impossible," he muttered, his voice a mixture of anger and a new, chilling fear. He emptied his entire pack onto the tent floor. We all searched. It wasn't there. "I never take it off," he kept repeating, his voice growing more frantic. "I never take it off." This was different. This was not carelessness. A wild animal might be attracted to the smell of coffee on a mug, but it would not steal a compass from a sealed pouch on a man's belt. This was an act of quiet, deliberate, and intelligent sabotage. We were being systematically disarmed. Our tools of navigation, our small comforts of home, were being taken from us, one by one. The final irrefutable proof of our predicament came that evening. The fog had not lifted. As the unseen sun set, the world simply transitioned from a featureless gray to a featureless, impenetrable black. We were four people trapped in a small bubble of firelight, an island in a whispering, gray sea. Maya had been silent for most of the day, sitting in a corner of the tent, her sketchbook open on her lap. But she hadn't been drawing. She had just been staring at a blank page, her piece of charcoal held loosely in her fingers. Suddenly she let out a small, sharp gasp. "What is it?" I asked, my nerves already stretched thin, screaming in alarm. She didn't speak. Her face was ashen in the firelight. She just held up the sketchbook. The page was no longer blank. A drawing had appeared on it. A drawing that Maya, her eyes wide with the terror that went beyond fear, swore she had not made. It was rendered in her own distinctive, smudged charcoal style, a perfect imitation of her work. It was a drawing of our campsite. It showed the two tents, the fire pit, the four of us huddled around the flames, our faces etched with fear. But we were not alone in the picture. In the spaces between the trees, just at the edge of the firelight, their forms blending with the trunks of the great pines, were other figures. They were tall, thin, and shadowy. They had no faces, no features. They were just long, spindly limbs and bodies that seemed to be made of tightly wrapped cloth or peeling bark. They were the whispering pines given form. And in their long, thin, branch-like hands they were holding things. One was holding a small ceramic mug with a cartoon fox on it. Another was holding a small, specialized boot brush. And a third, a tall figure standing just behind the drawing of the unsuspecting Liam, was holding a small, silver compass, dangling it from its long fingers as if it were a curious trinket. We stared at the drawing, a piece of impossible, irrefutable evidence. We were not alone. We were being watched, studied, and stolen from, piece, by the silent, faceless inhabitants of the Whispering Pines. The drawing was not a warning. It was a catalog, an inventory of their new collection. And we were the final items yet to be claimed. The drawing in Maya's sketchbook was a declaration of war. Or more accurately, a declaration that the war had already begun, and we were losing without even knowing we were fighting. We stared at the page, at the charcoal effigies of ourselves surrounded by the tall, faceless things from the woods. The firelight flickered, making the shadows in the drawing seem to shift and dance. Chloe stared at the image of the creature holding her mug, her face crumbling. A low, guttural wail of grief and terror escaped her lips, a sound that was half scream, half sob. Shoo! I hissed, my own panic a cold spike in my gut. I lunged forward and clamped a hand over her mouth, more out of instinct than thought. Don't let it hear you. Don't let it know you're scared. It already knows, Ethan. She sobbed into my palm, her body trembling. It drew the picture. She was right. The time for stealth was over. The pretense that we were merely campers had been stripped away. We were subjects under observation, and the observers were no longer content to remain unseen. From the fog-shrouded darkness just beyond our firelight, a voice called out. It was Liam's voice. A perfect, flawless imitation. Chloe, honey, what's wrong? Did you have a bad dream? The tone was gentle, loving, full of the easy concern he always had for her. Chloe froze, her eyes wide. She looked from the drawing in Maya's lap to the darkness where the voice had come from. Hope, that most terrible and resilient of human follies, flickered in her eyes. Liam, she whispered. Wait. Maya croaked, her voice a dry rasp. She grabbed Chloe's arm, her knuckles white. Chloe, no. It's not him. Look at the drawing. She pointed a trembling finger at the sketchbook. The shadowy figure holding Liam's compass was still there. I'm right here, sweetheart, the voice from the fog continued, closer now. I saw a light on the ridge. A rescue team. I came back to get you guys. We have to go now. Open the tent. Rescue. The word was a poison dart, aimed directly at the heart of our desperation. It was the perfect lure. The one thing we wanted to believe more than anything. It was in that moment that Liam, the real Liam, made the decision that would seal his fate. He was a man of action, a leader. To be huddled in a tent, waiting, was a form of torture for him. He looked at us, his face a grim mask of resolve in the firelight. I can't do this, he said, his voice a low, ragged growl. I'm not going to sit here while that thing out there wears my voice and plays with our minds. I am going to get help. Liam, no. Chloe cried, her voice breaking. You can't go out in that fog. Look at the drawing. It's waiting for you. The drawing is a scare tactic, he shot back, though I could see in his eyes he didn't believe his own words. It's trying to keep us paralyzed. Sticking together isn't working. It's taking things. It's learning. The satellite phone is our only chance. The signal is weak here, but I can get to higher ground. The main ridge is a mile east. I can get a signal out from there. I can make this real. We argued. We pleaded. But his mind was made up. He was choosing to fight the phantom with the cold, hard reality of technology. He packed a small, light go-bag, a bottle of water, the satellite phone, a flare gun, and a knife. I will be back by dawn, he said, his voice firm, trying to project a confidence none of us felt. He turned to us. Barricade the tents. Don't respond to anything you hear, no matter whose voice it uses. Promise me. We all nodded, our throats too tight to speak. He gave Chloe a quick, hard kiss, a final, desperate act of love. He clasped my shoulder, his grip like iron. "Keep them safe, Ethan," he whispered. And then he turned, took a deep breath, and walked out of the circle of our firelight. The thick, gray fog swallowed him in 2 steps. One moment he was there, a rock, our leader, a solid, reassuring presence. The next he was gone. And the forest fell completely, utterly silent. For the first time in 2 days, the whispering stopped. The sudden, absolute quiet was more terrifying than the noise had been. It was a listening quiet. A waiting quiet. The silence of a predator that has seen the prey break from the herd. We spent the next few hours in a state of suspended agony. We did as he said, barricading the tent flaps with our packs and gear. We extinguished the fire, plunging ourselves into darkness, hoping to make ourselves invisible. We just sat there, 3 people in a dark, cold tent, listening to the sound of our own frantic heartbeats. Around 3 a.m., a voice called out from the fog. It was Liam's voice. "I'm back," it called, the voice full of a breathless, triumphant excitement. "I got through. The signal was strong on the ridge. A helicopter is coming at first light. It's over. I told you I could do it. Let me in." Chloe scrambled towards the tent flap, a sob of pure relief escaping her lips. "Liam, wait," I hissed, grabbing her arm, my blood turning to ice. My watch glowed in the dark. It had only been 3 hours. It was impossible. He couldn't have made it to the ridge and back that fast, not in this fog. "What?" she cried, trying to pull away from me. "It's him. He did it. He saved us." "How do we know?" Maya whispered from the darkness, her voice trembling. "How do we know it's really him this time?" "Chloe, honey, it's me." The voice of Liam called again, closer now, right outside the nylon wall of our tent. "It's freezing out here. Open up. We have to be ready for the chopper." It was Maya who saved us from our hope. She switched on her headlamp, its beam cutting a stark white circle in the gloom. She had her sketchbook open on her lap. Her hand was shaking so badly the book trembled, but she held it up for us to see. She had drawn another picture. In the dark, she had drawn what she felt. The drawing showed the 3 of us huddled in the tent, our faces masks of fear. And outside, standing in the fog, was a tall, thin, shadowy figure. It was holding a satellite phone to where its mouth should have been, mimicking a person making a call. And its other hand, its long branch-like fingers, was raised in a small, friendly wave. The lie was laid bare in charcoal on paper. We stayed silent. We huddled together, listening as the voice of our friend pleaded, then cajoled, then grew angry and confused outside our tent. We listened for over an hour, until the voice finally faded away, replaced once more by the soft, sibilant whispering of the pines. We had followed Liam's last order. We had not responded, and in doing so we had condemned him. We did not sleep for the rest of the night. As the sun rose, the fog, as if its purpose was complete, finally began to thin, revealing a gray, weeping world. We knew Liam wasn't coming back, but we had to be sure. We had to go and see the empty space he had left behind. We packed up our camp, our movements slow and numb, like arthritic old men. The grief was a physical weight, a shroud as thick as the morning mist. But the fear was still there, a cold, sharp shard of ice in our hearts. We were still in its territory, and now it had a new voice in its repertoire. We headed east towards the ridge. As we walked, we began to notice how profoundly the forest had changed. It was empty. "Where are the squirrels?" Chloe asked, her voice a hollow echo in the still morning air. "And the birds? I haven't heard a single bird since sunrise." She was right. The constant, vibrant background chatter of the forest was gone. There were no birds flitting in the high branches, no chipmunks scuttling across our path, no signs of deer or elk. The woods were unnaturally, disturbingly still. It felt like we were walking through a beautifully rendered, but ultimately lifeless painting. A diorama. And then we began to find the empty spaces. The first was a small, sun-dappled clearing. In the center was a perfect, circular impression in the tall grass, where a doe and her fawn had clearly been bedded down for the night. The imprints of their bodies were still there, crisp and clear. But the deer were gone. There were no tracks leading away. Just the empty, body-shaped voids in the grass. A little further on, Maya pointed to a bird's nest tucked into the low-hanging branch of a fir tree. It was perfectly formed, a delicate cup of twigs and moss. Inside were 3 small, pale blue eggs. But they were wrong. They were hollow. Each egg had a tiny, perfectly drilled hole in the side, no bigger than a pinprick. The life within had been drained. We walked in a horrified, dawning silence, the evidence of a silent, creeping, and meticulous apocalypse all around us. This entity of the whispering pines, it didn't just kill in a messy, physical way. It didn't just take. It erased. It consumed the life, the essence, the story, and left behind a perfect, empty, and mocking shell. We found Liam an hour later. Or rather, we found his empty space. It was on the ridge at the base of a massive, ancient pine that offered the clearest view of the sky. His gear was there, arranged with an eerie, ceremonial neatness. His pack was leaning against the trunk of the tree. His Gore-Tex jacket was folded beside it. His sturdy hiking boots were placed side by side, the laces still perfectly tied. His satellite phone lay on the ground, its screen cracked and dark. It was all there. Everything that made up the hiker. Everything but Liam himself. He was an outline, a negative space, a man-shaped hole in the fabric of the world. Chloe collapsed to her knees, a final ragged sob tearing from her throat. Her grief, which had been held in check by fear, now overwhelmed her. Maya stood frozen, her hand clamped over her mouth, her eyes wide and vacant, staring at the empty boots. And I felt nothing. Just a cold, profound emptiness that mirrored the scene in front of me. The thing in the woods hadn't just taken Liam. It had taken our ability to properly mourn him. His death was not a tragedy. It was a data point. An erasure. It was Maya, our quiet observer, who saw the final, terrible detail. Her eyes were not on the empty gear, but on the tree itself. She raised a trembling finger and pointed at the thick, rough bark, just above where Liam's pack was resting. Carved into the bark, freshly etched as if with a sharp fingernail, was a drawing. It was a crude, childlike stick figure. It was smiling. And in its long stick-like hand it was holding a small ceramic coffee mug. "We have to get out of here," I said, my voice a dead, flat thing, devoid of all emotion. "Now!" We turned our backs on the silent, heartbreaking memorial to our friend. We turned our backs on the empty space that had once been the leader of our small pack. And we began the long, desperate walk out of the woods. But the forest was not done with us. We had survived the night. But the day held a new, more personal kind of torture. The whispering started again. But it was different now. It was no longer a general ambient sound. It was personal. It was focused. And it used the voice of the person we missed the most. "Chloe," it whispered in a perfect imitation of Liam's deep, laughing voice from 2 days before. A voice full of warmth and love. "Remember that time we tried to canoe down the Allagash, and you capsized us trying to take a picture of a moose?" Chloe cried out, stumbling over a root. "Stop it," she whimpered, her hands flying to her ears. "Please just stop it." "Maya," the voice continued, shifting now to my own, a perfect echo of a conversation we'd had just nights before. "Look at the texture of that moss. The fractal patterns. You should draw it. It's beautiful." Maya squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head, her sketchbook clutched to her chest like a shield. No. It's not real." It was a new, crueler game. It was using our own shared history, our friendship, our love for each other, as a weapon against us. It was trying to lure us back into the comfortable, familiar patterns of our group, to make us forget that one of us was now just an empty space in the world. It was trying to make us forget so that it could make us stay. "Don't listen," I said, my voice a low, urgent command as I grabbed both of their arms, pulling them along. "It's not him. It's not us. It's an echo. It's just an empty space trying to fill itself up with our memories. Keep walking. Don't listen." We walked faster, a desperate, silent march of 3. trying to outrun the ghost of our own friendship. The forest became a blur of gray and green, and the phantom voice of our dead friend became our relentless, heartbreaking tormentor. The journey out of that forest was a special kind of hell. We were no longer three friends supporting each other. We were three separate islands of grief and terror, bound together only by a shared desperate need to escape. And the forest, the entity, it would not grant us a moment's peace. The voice of Liam was our constant, phantom companion. It didn't shout. It didn't threaten. It was far crueler than that. It whispered our inside jokes. It hummed the songs we used to sing on long car rides. It recounted shared memories with perfect, heartbreaking accuracy. It was a relentless psychological assault, using the very fabric of our friendship to try and unravel our minds. Ethan, remember that time in Moab? It would whisper, using Liam's voice, a voice full of laughter. When you tried to cook pancakes and set the spatula on fire? I would just clench my jaw, my knuckles white on my pack straps, and walk faster. Maya, it would say, its tone shifting to one of gentle encouragement. You never finished that drawing of the fern. I really wanted to see it. Maya would just shake her head, her eyes squeezed shut, her sketchbook clutched to her chest like a shield. But Chloe was taking the worst of it. Liam was her world. His voice was her world. And it was being used to systematically dismantle her. Chloe, my love, the voice would whisper, so soft and intimate it felt like a physical touch. Your hands must be cold. Let me hold them. She would just sob, a quiet, continuous, broken sound as she stumbled through the woods. Maya and I had to hold her up, one on each arm, practically dragging her forward. She was losing the will to fight. The ghost of her love was more powerful than her will to survive. We walked for hours, a desperate, silent march against a ghost made of our own memories. We were near the edge of the designated wilderness area. We could almost smell the mundane, beautiful scent of car exhaust on a distant road when we came to the bridge. It was a small, rickety wooden structure spanning Black Creek itself. The creek was shallow here, no more than 2 feet deep, but the rocks were slick and treacherous. The bridge was the only safe way across. It was the final barrier between us and the real world. As we approached it, Chloe, who had been a dead weight between us, suddenly stopped. She lifted her head, her eyes wide. What is it? I asked, my own exhausted senses screaming. She didn't answer me. She was staring at the far side of the bridge. Liam, she whispered, her voice full of a fragile, dangerous hope. I looked. Standing on the other side of the creek waiting for us was Liam. It was not a shadow. It was not a whisper. It looked solid. It looked real. He was wearing the same clothes he had been when he walked into the fog. His face was not twisted or monstrous. It was just him. He was smiling, a warm, reassuring smile that I had seen 1,000 times. Hey, he said, and his voice was not a mimic. It was his real voice, full of a gentle, loving relief. I was so worried. I got turned around in that fog, but I'm okay. I found a different way out. I'm so glad you guys are okay. It was a perfect illusion. It was a flawless lie. There was no sign of anything wrong. He looked healthy. He looked real. He looked like the man Chloe loved. Maya and I knew the truth. We had seen the empty boots, the stick figure drawing. But Chloe, her heart, broken and battered, chose to believe. She let out a sob of pure, unadulterated joy, a sound so full of relief it was physically painful to hear. Liam, she cried, pulling away from us with a strength we didn't know she had left. She started to run towards him, her arms outstretched. Chloe, no. I yelled, lunging forward, my hand grabbing nothing but empty air. It's not him. But she didn't hear me. She was deaf to everything but the sight of her love returned to her. She ran onto the old wooden bridge. I see it now in my nightmares, replayed in perfect, agonizing slow motion. The bridge, which had seemed sturdy enough, was covered in a thin, almost invisible film of wet, black moss. It was as slick as ice. Her foot slipped. She cried out, a short, sharp sound of surprise, not of fear. Her ankle twisted beneath her. She fell, not forward towards the waiting figure of Liam, but sideways, hard, against the rotten wooden railing. The wood, old and decayed from 100 years of damp forest air, did not hold. It splintered and broke with a sharp, sickening crack. And Chloe fell. She fell in a silent, graceful arc, her body tumbling into the shallow, rocky creek below. There was a single, ugly thud as her head struck a large, gray boulder. And then she was still, her body a broken, discarded thing in the clear, cold water. I stood frozen on my side of the bridge, my mind a white-hot blank of shock and horror. Beside me Maya was screaming a raw, piercing sound of pure denial. And the figure of Liam on the other side just stood there. Its warm, loving smile did not change. It did not move to help. It did not react at all. It just watched the scene with the placid, unnerving calm. Then very slowly it raised a hand. And it gave a small, friendly, almost apologetic wave. And its form dissolved into a shimmering heat haze and vanished, leaving only the sound of the creek and Maya's heartbroken screams. The official report tells a story of a tragic accident. It says that Chloe, distraught from the disappearance of her fiancé and disoriented from exhaustion, slipped on a poorly maintained bridge and fell to her death. It says that Maya and I, already suffering from psychological trauma, were unable to save her. It's a neat, tidy, logical explanation. It's a lie that allows everyone to sleep at night. Everyone but me. Maya never recovered. The world we returned to was no longer a world she could live in. The silence she had once sought in her art was now filled with the whispering of the pines and the sight of Liam waving from across a creek. She told me she saw him in reflections in shop windows. She said she heard his voice calling her name from empty rooms. The forest had imprinted itself onto her soul, and it would not let her go. 6 months after we returned, Maya walked into the nearest state forest and was never seen again. She left a note on her kitchen table. It had only 5 words. I have to go find them. And then there was one. Me. The sole survivor. The lucky one. But I am not lucky. I am cursed. I am cursed with the question that has become the central pillar of my existence. Why me? Why am I the only one it didn't take? I have spent the last 3 years in a quiet purgatory of research and paranoia. I have read everything I can find about the Black Creek Wilderness. I have cross-referenced old newspaper articles about disappearances. I have delved into the restricted archives of the Wilderness Protocol, searching for similar occurrences. And I have found them. Dozens of them, stretching back over a century. Stories of mimics in the woods. Of strange, localized fogs. Of voices on the wind. Of small, personal items going missing before the people themselves do. It is a known phenomenon. A protocol exists for it, and it is a simple one: avoidance. Do not camp in the whispering groves. Do not answer to voices that are not attached to a body. Do not trust your own memories when the air grows still. And in my research, I found a recurring theory. A strange, terrifying hypothesis posited by a folklorist in the 1970s who had studied the region. He called the entity a narrative predator. His theory was that the creature, the entity, the consciousness of the forest itself, does not feed on flesh or blood. It feeds on stories. It is an intelligence of immense age and patience, and it is utterly alien. It learns. It observes. And it is searching for something. A specific pattern. A specific kind of consciousness. The disappearances, the mimicry, the psychological torment, it is all a form of filtration. A process of elimination. The entity presents a series of tests. It watches how you react to fear, to grief, to hope. It learns your voice, your memories, your attachments. It takes small pieces of you to see what you are made of. And for most, once it has learned all it needs to, it erases them. It consumes their story, their life force, and leaves behind an empty space. So why did it leave me? Why am I the one who is still here to tell the tale? The answer, I now believe, is the most terrifying possibility of all. I was not spared. I was not the survivor. I was not the lucky one. I was the one it chose. Liam was the leader, a man of action and logic. He failed the test of patience. Chloe was the heart, a woman of deep love and emotion. She failed the test of hope. Maya was the artist, a woman of sensitivity and perception. She failed the test of despair. And I was the storyteller. I was the one who could see the patterns. I was the one who could understand the narrative that was unfolding. I was the one who could put the pieces together. And perhaps the entity did not take me because it did not want to consume my story from the outside. It wanted to tell its story from the inside. It had found its compatible mind, its chosen host, its protocol for interacting with the world. I live a quiet life now. I have moved to a small, unremarkable town, far from any deep woods. I do not camp. I do not hike. I surround myself with the simple, predictable noise of human life. But I am not the same. Sometimes on still nights when the wind is just right, I can hear it. A faint, high-pitched whispering just at the edge of my hearing. It is not menacing anymore. It is companionable. And sometimes when I look in the mirror, my reflection will smile when I am not smiling. A slow, patient, knowing smile. It did not take me that day because it had already found what it was looking for. It let me leave because it knew I would carry it with me, a seed planted in the fertile soil of a storyteller's mind. I am its empty space now. I am its observer in the human world. And my purpose, the purpose it has given me, is to do this. To tell its stories. To bear witness. To warn you. So when you go into the deep, quiet places, and you hear a sound that does not belong, do not be curious. Do not be brave. You run. Because you do not know if you are the one it will discard, or if you are the one it has been waiting for. Thank you for listening to this testimony from the Wilderness Protocol. Survivor's guilt is a heavy burden, but the alternative is far worse. Sometimes being chosen is not a blessing. It is a curse without an end. If you understand the weight of this warning, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more reports from the quiet places. The wilderness is always watching, and it is always looking for a good story.